You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the 4th season Voyager episode, Scientific Method. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
Folks, be sure to stick around to the end of the episode. We're going to have your listener feedback, all of it on our recent discussion of Errand of Mercy. So that should be fun and interesting. Be sure to get your very own Secrets of Star Trek merchandise, including nice t-shirts, mugs, stickers. It's a nice sticker you can put out on a water bottle on a laptop cover. That would be fun. By visiting sqpn.com/merch, MERCH. And so we come to the part of the show where I asked Jimmy to give us a recap of what happens in this episode.
This week, the crew of Voyager starts displaying bizarre symptoms of different conditions. For example, Janeway is suffering terrible headaches and is completely on edge. The doctor determines that some unknown force is messing with him, including on the genetic level. He finds the tech he finds on the molecular level is slightly out of phase, so he adjusts Seven's visual scanners to detect things that are out of phase. She discovers that many of the crew have bizarre devices attached to them, and there are over 50 aliens on board performing experiments on the crew. She ends up firing a phaser at one of the aliens and making her visible. In custody, the alien says she represents a team of scientists who are just like the Federation. She promises that if Janeway allows the experiments to continue, the fatality rate will be minimal, though there will be some deformities, and she will even share the data they gain with Janeway. So, yay, science! But Janeway says they're exploiting another race for their own benefit, and humanity decided not to do that a long time ago, so they are not morally equivalent with each other. The aliens thwart the initial plans to get rid of them, but when they kill a nameless crewwoman that we've never seen before and will never see again in front of Janeway, she decides that she's had enough. She locks the ship's course on a path between two binary pulsars that will likely crush it like a tin can. She refuses to release the lock on the ship's course, so the aliens are forced to leave. In the end, Tom Paris and B'Elanna questioned whether their new relationship was part of the alien experiment, but they decide to just roll with it and see how the experiment turns out. The end.
Father, what did you think of this one?
I thought it was overall a decent episode. You know, probably not going to be on like my list of absolute best top Voyager episodes, but something that was still good and that kept my interest for the duration of the episode. I think I would have actually liked it better if it were not an idea that we really already saw in the Next Generation 2nd season episode where Silence has lease, where Captain Picard gets ready to destroy the ship rather than lose several of his crew, maybe half or whatever it was going to be in some alien experiment. Or Nagilum, there you go. That was the guy's name. And then Schisms later in the 6th season of Next Generation. You've got some aliens performing experiments on the crew without their knowledge. So, you know, those in my mind really took down, in a sense, what my opinion of it, just because I felt like this was something we've seen before. But as it was, I did like some of it. I liked Seven and the Doctor discovering and combating what was going on, and even liked, you know, seeing B'Elanna Torres developing. You know, where early on she's sort of lecturing Seven of Nine and realizes, oh my gosh, this is the kind of lecture I used to be getting a couple of years ago. Now I'm giving it. So nice.
Jimmy, what'd you think?
I had basically totally forgotten this episode, so this was like a fresh watch for me. And it's not surprising. It's kind of mid-range for me. I didn't hate it, so I didn't remember it. And I didn't love it, so I didn't remember it. So it's just kind of, it's an okay episode. I agree with Father. We've seen this, you know, before. In addition, I mean, this episode really made me hungry for a cellular peptide cake with mint frosting. From the episode Phantasms of Next Generation, where it was invisible parasites on people. Also, and I'd forgotten about where Silence has lease. I remembered Schisms, but I'd forgotten about where Silence has lease. So I thought towards the end of the episode, we'll just blow up the ship. But okay, they did that in Where Silence Has Lease. Picard threatened to blow up the ship, so they needed to give Janeway something else to do.
Right. I like the idea of, you know, an alien species treating us like a lower species, like like we're being observed, like we're on Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. There's a Gen X reference for you. That we're just to be observed. We're not to be treated as a higher life form, or that these people don't care about higher life forms being treated this way. They have the ends that justify the means in their philosophy.
Yeah, it's Star Trek, so the science is shaky because doing experiments on an alien race, they say that these experiments we're doing are gonna, because they don't view us like rats. We don't data share with rats.
Right.
But they don't care about the fact they're doing this, and they try to. There's an element of humanity, may not be the right word since they're aliens, but there's an element of compassion in it, in that we're trying to be as minimally harmful as possible with these experiments. But doing these on y'all will enable us to cure physical and psychological ailments in our race.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, okay, experiments on another race are unlikely to produce generalizable results to your own.
Right. But the idea that they want to share it, I give them kudos for not specifically mentioning the Nazis experiments, in the concentration camps. But we'll share our data with you. Oh, thank you, Dr. Mengele. That's really nice of you to really give us that opportunity. I mean, it has that creepy feel. It's like the way that scientist says it's like, oh, it's completely reasonable, and it comes up every once in a while in Star Trek. The scientists who are completely reasonable and off their rocker bad. Like they're like, really, that's kind of evil, even though you sound reasonable. And I think Lower Decks did a great job in a couple episodes really highlighting that, like the weird scientist thing, the evil scientist thing. It's, there is still, I think, a generalized, sci-fi really likes to bring up this idea of science is great, but the scientists can't always be trusted just because they're scientists.
By the way, I also agree with Father that I really liked, where 7 of 9 in the opening sequence is she's like rerouting power in a Jeffries tube, and B'Elanna comes in and says, "You're messing up stuff in engineering, stop it now," and gives her this lecture that's like the kind that B'Elanna used to get. And unless you think about it, since we're watching these out of order, it's like, oh, this is like right after the introduction of 7 of 9. She's only been on the ship for a few episodes. So you kind of have to remember that when you're watching this many years later.
Right. I liked 7 kind of pointing out, like, I'm not used to working in hierarchies, that where I have to get permission. If, like, she's used to, you're a Borg drone. If something needs to be done, you go do it. You don't have, there's no one to ask permission of, because we're all working as drones in this, big hive.
Though they later take the edge off that with the Borg Queen.
They do. Because
we need a single critical failure point in order to defeat them every time.
Exactly. But I did like that. It's kind of funny because, if you've ever worked in IT, it's like, you show up, what is causing this issue in this particular printer in this floor? And you walk in and you're like, what are you doing? Did you ask permission to plug that in there? No, stop doing that. And it's the equivalent of that with B'Elanna. And she's so much less volatile. It's interesting going back and forth between now season 2 and season 4 to see how B'Elanna has changed. She's still got that Klingon edge, but she's so much less volatile than she used to be. And I like this, of all the characters that evolve throughout the series, I think maybe she doesn't evolve the most, but she does have an interesting arc for her character. Harry Kim probably the least changed throughout the series, but she has an interesting evolution as a character. And that relationship with Tom Paris that's developed, I mean, really, we've seen hints before. Did we already do Day of Honor where they were stuck in space in the suits? I think we already did that one.
I don't remember.
I don't know.
But that's kind of where their relationship began, I think. But here, like they're at the beginnings, and it's kind of funny how at the end where they say, as you mentioned, Jimmy, do you think our relationship was caused as part of the experiment? And they're like, yeah. Who cares? Like, it is what it is now. Let's just go. And it's kind of fun. Like, who cares how the relationship begins? You're in a relationship now. Your feelings you have feelings for one another, just go with it. Just if you're happy with where you are, who cares how it started? Just go. So I thought that was kind of fun.
There's a scene in Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado where Nanki Poo, who's the male hero, and Yum Yum, his beloved, are at cross. They're kind of star-crossed in the beginning because Yum Yum is engaged to be married to Coco, the cheap tailor, and who's also her guardian. So she's under his authority, and she can't have any relations with Nanki Poo. And there is a scene where they're singing about what they would be doing if it wasn't for the law that condemned you to death if you flirt. And they're like, we could be sitting next to each other with our arms around each other like this, and we could be doing this. And they start singing about, they could look into each other's eyes, and they could breathe sighs of love, and they could even tenderly kiss. But they're singing about how this is what we'll never do. And as they're actually doing it. So they're like, the actors will be kissing each other, singing this, oh, this, oh, this. And they kiss every time. This is what we'll never do. We'll never do. And it reminds me of the scene at the end of this where, Paris and B'Elanna are talking, and they're sitting next to each other, and they're getting ready to kiss. And it's like, wait, our relationship could all be an experiment. And Tom is like, thank God we found out in time. And B'Elanna is like, oh yes, thank God. And they kiss.
Yeah. By the way, we did do Day of Honor 2.5 years ago. So as we're recording this, so we that was not too many episodes before this. I did think it was kind of weird, like even if they were already starting, be attracted to each other, they were acting a little over the top. The whole canoodling on duty. That's a serious infraction. That's a serious breakdown in discipline. But like Tom lying to get out of his sickbay duties, because at this point Tom is helping the doctor in sickbay as a as extra duties
nurse.
Now that Cass is gone. Thank you. Now that Cass is taking a hike, he and another character are helping out, and he kind of lies to get out of sickbay early so that he can go apologize to B'Elanna for canceling a date or whatever it was with flowers. We still have this stupid thing with we're on rations, replicator rations, we're rationing power. And then they do things like, I'm going to beam from one part of the ship to the other. Like, it's a huge use of power. I mean, beaming cannot be a low power thing, I'm sure. But you got to just go with it. I did note, I also did not remember everything about this episode. I did vaguely recall the premise. But I noticed as soon as we saw a binary pulsar, I'm like, oh, they're going to get sucked in. Like, it's just, if there's a binary star or some sort of dangerous thing, but that we have to keep our distance from, by the end of the episode, they will be very close to it in danger of being destroyed. Just Star Trek. That's Star Trek.
Yeah.
So Janeway, ticked off through the whole episode. And, if I were a Kate Mulgrew, that could be kind of fun to just be ticked off the whole week of filming this episode, just as part of your character. And it's kind of nice to see, the captain is not always put together. She's not always having a good time, always. And, she wasn't wrong when she was yelling at Tom and B'Elanna.
No, but she was over the top. I mean, like she's when we later see once Seven gets her out of phase vision powers, that Janeway has giant needles, like 4 of them stuck through her head.
Yes.
Which is responsible for her headaches. Although if they're out of phase, how do they stay in her head, and how are they affecting the matter in her head? But, she's also surrounded by a couple of aliens who are monitoring her situation, which is a key plot point, because the doctor has, once they realize we've got at least 56 aliens on board doing this to us, the doctor's first thought is, you got to go tell Janeway. And she walks in and Janeway is surrounded by aliens with giant needles in her head. And it's like, oh, can't tell her right now, which is a nice twist. They do a nice set of things, opening up possibilities and then closing them off for us. But when Janeway is talking to Tuvok about, the situation with Tom and B'Elanna, she's really getting on his case, and she's like, you've got 13 department heads who report to you every day, straighten them out. She didn't want any of this fraternization. And Tuvok has a great line. He says, shall I flog them also?
Yes. I love that line as well.
And it's like, we've already had this is our 4th year. We've had conversations from Janeway herself about people are going to start pairing off. You can't expect people to be on a 70-year voyage and not start forming relationships with each other. So it's a little inconsistent with things she herself has said. And I think the episode would have benefited if Tuvok had pointed that out to her.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But that was a great moment with Tuvok. I love that Tuvok has a sense of humor, mostly with Janeway, especially with Janeway. Also, Tuvok didn't snitch. That Janeway points out, Tuvok didn't snitch, even though Tom thought he did. So, there's depth to Tuvok, shall we say. The interesting thing with the Doctor, he basically recruits Seven as a portable scanner. Like she becomes sort of the Doctor's tricorder in the sense of, because he's stuck on the holodeck because they tried to delete him because he was
interfering with their experiments.
Yeah, figure out what was going on. And then Seven becomes sort of his scanner, but she also comes up with a plan. She wants to mess with the EPS conduits to introduce a neuroleptic shock to shock everybody, basically. That's the Doctor's plan. Her plan was to confront the aliens and shoot them with a phaser. And he convinces her that that's not a good idea. And so, but when she does try to do this whole plan to shock everyone, Tuvok notices her doing something which could be very dangerous. And it highlights this lingering suspicion of Seven, right? She's still the newly aboard. She's still kind of the Borg. And I like that, again, they bring it up without being explicit, like Tuvok is suspicious of her because she's still a Borg and she's doing this weird thing. No, they just come up like step away from the console, etc. And so she ends up going with her original plan anyway, which is to shoot an alien and expose them to the rest of the crew. So that they can see there as well. So I like that aspect of it. Let's see. Another thing was, so Chakotay is the first one who shows the symptoms of the premature aging. And so we have the scene of Robert Beltran as Chakotay in his quarters. I think he feels flushed or something like that. And he kind of goes to the sink and puts water in his face. And then he does this thing where his hand goes through his hair and it just all falls off. So clearly they have he's got a bald cap and then a fake hair on top. But it's like, oh man, that's like, I guess they said it was like premature aging in him as opposed to radiation.
But people don't premature age that way because he looks totally weird. He doesn't look like any aged person you've ever seen.
Yeah, it looks like a victim of radiation poisoning or something. Like his eyes are sunken, and but there is a scene where
they're meant to look sunken. To me, it looks like he's suddenly grown ridges around his eyes.
right. So Neelix also succumbs, and he's got DNA from a non
Talaxian.
Non-Talaxian species called Mylians in his ancestry, and that's coming out. And so you got a scene of him and Chakotay in sickbay, the two old men sharing and comparing their ailments. I thought that was a funny scene.
One thing I really liked about that too, and Neelix being Neelix, he realizes he's developed some extra sweat glands. When Chakotay says, "What's that smell?" He says, "Oh, these extra sweat glands. Here, let me sit down right next to you." There's no sense of like, "Oh, I stink. Maybe I should keep my distance."
What does Chakotay say? Something like, "It's hardly noticeable." Yeah, that was good. There was a few good, moments to break the tension, which I think is when, especially Voyager is at its best, when they break the tension a little bit with these personal character moments with because certain characters have an ability to have subtle humor. The Doctor, Neelix, to bring things in, and I think that works out well. Especially when you have Seven as a straight man for some of that works really well.
Yeah. I like what they did with the Doctor, where it looks like his program has gone offline and because that happens in various episodes. And again, it's been a while since I had seen this one. So I thought, okay, this is one of them where we lose the Doctor for the rest of the episode. And no, he, realized what was going on and transferred himself into a holodeck program where he could kind of hide. And they don't say that out loud so that it's, revealed to us a little bit later. It's just a nice little touch, I thought, there on the way he was combating the situation.
Yeah, they'd long since given him that ability to transport himself to the holodeck and that sort of thing. Again, I think that was one of the developments in Voyager I think was really good, was when they freed the Doctor from the confines of sickbay with the mobile emitter and letting him go to holodecks. It allowed the character to expand a bit, and so I think that's been good for the show. So let's see. You mentioned the crewman dying on the bridge. I mean, that's the moment when things snap. And with Voyager, every crewman that dies is a big deal, or it should be, because they're not getting new crewmen from anywhere. So it should be rarer on Voyager than on the other shows, because you can't stop at a starbase and pull in some new replacements.
They always get the crew members they need, just like they always get the shuttlecrafts they need,
and the photon torpedoes.
Yeah.
But that's the moment where Janeway snaps, and she's like, "You've pushed me to the edge." It was kind of almost like a parent, like you've got on my last nerve. That's the straw that broke the camel's back. I am done. And she's like, "I'm going to drive us into the sun," and they believe her. Although
it takes some
Yeah.
convincing. The aliens don't, and they think this is a ploy, and it turns out not being a ploy. She really is going to drive the ship between the two pulsars.
Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, as a parent, you have to carry through on your threat. Like, I really am going to turn this car around and go home, and we're not going to the theme park. Like, every once in a while, you gotta follow through. And so with this one, she follows through. Even as Tuvok's like, 1 in 20 chance we'll survive this thing. Oh, I guess we're doing it then.
He says that this is a more reckless solution than he anticipated from her, and then afterwards she asked him about it, and he says clearly reckless was an understatement.
Yes,
another example of his little sense of humor there that that he brings out.
And one of my pet peeves about the science of space travel in Star Trek, you would have to be going superluminal in order to cover the distances that they were talking about. Like, it's the contracted distances, but whatever. That's it's Star Trek. You gotta deal with it.
And this is basically another talking dramatically over consoles ending.
Yeah. I mean, they have a little CGI of them flying through, and I did like the moment when the alien craft disengaged from the hull, and one of them gets destroyed.
There's two of them, and one of them breaks apart as it disengages. So not all those aliens got home. Yeah.
Well, so consequences, fool around and find out, and they fooled around with Voyager. That was a bad idea. Any other notes on this one, Father?
I don't have anything else.
How about you, Jimmy?
Just talking about lines that I liked. It is creepy to see everyone with all the weird alien devices on them. But talking about individual lines I like, when Janeway is talking to the alien leader, she's trying to establish this moral equivalence between her group and the Voyager crew. And I like, at one point, Janeway says, "Sorry, these lab rats are fighting back."
Yes. Yeah. That was one of my possibilities for my ending quote for the show. I like that. Excellent. So, all right, that'll do for our discussion of a scientific method. As I think I didn't necessarily say it up front, but It was a decent episode. Not one of the best, but certainly not bad. There were some fun moments.
Bad scientific method, though. This is not how you do it in the real world.
Exactly.
For among other things, this never would have gotten past an institutional review board.
Clearly, yes. All right. So I did mention we have some feedback, so let's go over that. This is from our recent episode discussing those old scientists episode of Errand of Mercy. Steve on Facebook writes, "Ooh, I always liked this one. Imagine if aliens did that to us. No one could touch a weapon or make any gesture of physical harm without causing searing heat. That would certainly change things on this planet, that's for sure." Okay, here's a good one. So I post clips of the show on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts now, if folks haven't noticed. And you can follow us on those social networks. And a user on Instagram named Cody Suck says, "Oh, shoot, a bunch of," and I mean this respectfully, "a bunch of old dudes having a podcast about Star Trek. Sold." That burns a little, but okay. Thank you, Cody. We welcome to the show.
Old dudes have stuff to say.
That's right.
Yeah. And then let's see. Patrick on YouTube writes, "I wonder if Baldric, the thing that the sash that Worf and Cora wear, is related to Baldric on the Rowan Atkinson show Blackadder." But they have two different etymologies. I looked it up.
Yeah.
The name Baldric is with a K. The item of clothing is Baldric, no
With
K.
a C.
Yeah, with a C. The name goes back to Old English and means brave king, while Baldric, the item of clothing, comes from Old French and means sword belt. That was interesting. But thanks, Patrick. Good question. Lloyd on YouTube writes, "As far as the Klingons with less makeup, I like to think of those as core light." Bump. Nice dad joke. And then
As opposed, for those who may need assistance, as opposed to Coors Light.
Yes. Sorry. Some food for thought, no pun intended. When you review, always intend your puns. When you review City on the Edge of Forever, when Kirk purchased that bologna and hard roll, he may have altered the timeline. He may have purchased the last bologna and hard roll the store made for that day, thus upsetting the customer who would have made that purchase had Kirk not been there. The bologna and hard roll customer becomes so upset that he starts his own bologna and hard roll company and becomes so rich that he's able to build a space fleet. But as Scotty might say, how he didn't know he didn't make the thing?
I was just going to go there.
And then finally, New Jersey Esperantist writes, "Errand of Mercy has a slightly different feel if one takes into account the events in Discovery Season 1. But I'm not sure what he means by that. The Klingon War.
Because the war with the Klingons that we get in Discovery Season 1 as opposed to the Organian Peace Treaty.
Right.
But this is before they go to Organia.
Right. Yeah, Discovery Season 1, does the Battle of the Binary Stars take place before or after this? Is it
before? So
okay.
This is, you'll remember Captain Pike comes on in Discovery Season 2.
Yeah.
So Discovery Season 1 is set even further before the original series.
Yeah.
Of course.
10 years or more before the original series, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Interesting. Yeah, that's true. It is different when you take that into account. And that's all our feedback. So thank you, everyone. We really do love to get your feedback. And now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Jeremy S., Joanne M., Christine G., Andrew M., and Pat F. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of Voyager's scientific method? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com, or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. You can also watch The Secrets of Star Trek on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Enterprise episode, Carbon Creek. which is a good one.
Mhm.
Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And Father Jason Tyler, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, good morning, Captain. That's a matter of opinion.